Okay, it is time for the next part of our PDU series for RBTs, and we're going to be talking about sibling interaction. So many of us work in homes where there are frequently siblings around, and that can pose to be pretty challenging. So our hope today is to use the research from pivotal response training, which is essentially using the environment to cue learning opportunities within the environment. This has been effective or demonstrated to be effective in classrooms. And what we have found in clinical practice is that it's also seemingly very effective in the home environment as well. You can also use this if you're working in a center-based setting whenever there are peers around as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Quickly, we're going to review what assent and assent withdrawal are. So again, assent is an willingness and ongoing participation in whatever the intervention is. So for example, if you are running functional communication trials, the learner is going to demonstrate that assent to run these functional communication trials by willingness to participate. An assent withdrawal would be demonstrating behaviors that would indicate that they are not willing to participate in that type of intervention for the day or the session or the time. And we talked about how we can gain assent and prevent assent withdrawal in the previous PDUs. So again, we just want to make sure that what we're doing is honoring the learner rather than using forced compliance. Because in my experience, which, let's see, we're going on year 15 now, when the learner isn't a willing participant and you're using forced compliance, you typically won't see long-lasting change. You might see short, effective change in that moment, but it's not going to be something that's ongoing. So for example, I know that we've all been trained to say, if I place a demand, I have to follow through with that demand. Assent withdrawal essentially says that's not really the case, because if you're using hand-over-hand prompting or forcibly manipulating a child's body to comply, that's not true compliance. That is just you exerting control over another person and removing their bodily autonomy. Now, when we're looking at trauma-informed and, in my opinion, ethical practices, we want to ensure that what we're doing is not forcibly having a child do something. So you can use other strategies like time delay procedures, again, functional communication procedures, anything that keeps the environment calm and steady and regulating and shows that you are a safe person as an adult is going to be what is going to be the most effective long term. So that's just a quick synopsis for assent and assent withdrawal. Today, we're going to be talking about the in-home setting, managing expectations, including siblings, and responding to siblings. So the first thing is, yes, sorry. I skipped a slide and I apologize. The first thing that we're going to be going through is that in-home setting. And again, if you're not working at home, think about this for the clinical environment that you're working in as well. So you're going to create the context. You are the implementer. You are the one who is controlling the environment. That doesn't mean that you're controlling the child, but you are controlling what's present in the environment. You are controlling what stimuli you have, and you're also recognizing that you are a stimulus within the environment as well. So if you're looking to have a really fun session, you need to be a really fun person who is smiling and engaging with that learner. And if they are engaging in assent withdrawal behaviors, you're still doing things that are fun and engaging, even if it's just with yourself. You're going to control what you can. So again, going back to, we're not going to force a child to do something that can create a very unsafe environment. You're only going to control the stimuli that are within that environment. If you're working in the home, That might also be where you say, hey, mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whatever the caregiver is, or whoever the caregiver is, it might say, if you can give me 5 minutes, then come in and check on us, that's great. Usually caregivers are very willing to do what it is that you are needing in the environment because they recognize that what you're doing is trying to establish learning opportunities for their child. Find a space that is going to be the most amenable to creating a learning environment. So, free from distractions, free from extra clutter, and also enriched with the stimuli that are going to be the most appropriate for that learner. That's going to include reinforcers or preferred activities and items. That's also going to include all of the stimuli that you might be needing. And you're also going to work collaboratively with the caregiver. So it might be where you say, I really want us to work on this today. And that after we do this, then I would really like to see if we can get some more sibling interaction. The other thing that I'm going to say is whatever you bring out, let's say that you're using that child's own stimuli, their own toys, their own preferred things, clean it up when you're finished. That's just being a good steward inside of somebody else's home. I always like to think of myself as a house guest. Yes, I'm here to provide some sort of behavior change programming within the home, but that also means that I still have to be polite and respectful. And if I used a game, I'm going to put that game away. And I will tell you this, 9 times out of 10, if a child says, I'm still playing with this and it's the end of your session, and then you say, okay, well, you're going to need to clean this up whenever you're finished with it. As soon as you walk out that door, they're finished playing with it. So go ahead and have them clean it up and say, you can get it back out again with your parent or with your caregiver. This is also how we can establish more of a therapeutic rapport with caregivers so that they are welcoming to us in the environment. Okay. So let's say that you're setting up and there is a sibling who is coming in and out of the room. Set up those expectations before you begin any activities with your kids. So let's say that you are working on tacting letters. This might not be something where the sibling needs to be involved. That doesn't mean that you can't involve them. You might say something like, first I'm going to do these 6 letters with brother or sister. Then do you want to try some letters too? This is one of those ways too that you can establish that with them. Because I have also found, I'm sure many of you have, that you might hold up a letter and then the sibling tacks what the letter is. And you're like, okay, I won't count that one because then that's going to be prompting then my target client, the target learner of what the letter is that you're trying to identify. So instead, you might say, we're going to do this first, and then I would love it if we could all play together. Or I also do this quite often, which is that we're trying to get our learners to tolerate losing or tolerate following rules within a game. So you're going to establish that at the very beginning. So for example, let's say you're playing a game of Uno, very popular game, right? In our ABA sessions. You're going to say, we're going to play by the Uno rules. So you might even have to pull them up, have a visual of what they are, so that if they try to double stack a draw 2, you can say that's actually an Uno rule. You can't double stack. You still have to draw the draw 2. Then you can play your card, right? You're also going to want to set a schedule or a routine. And I've had many people ask me why a routine? Routines are trauma informed. When we have a routine going where we say, this is what we're going to do first, this is what we're going to do next, then we're going to do that, that establishes something for the child to expect versus you following that child around. right? And this becomes difficult whenever we're talking about child-led programming because so often we find ourselves stuck in following a child around, waiting for them to find something that they're engaged with, when we really just need to say, this is what we're going to be engaging with. And then recognize when that is sense being withdrawn, right? And then say, it seems like this isn't what you want to do right now. Let's do this instead. We can move on to the next thing on your schedule or within the routine that we've got established. Most households also have a routine already established, certain times that they're allowed to have snack or lunch or whatever it might be, waking up from a nap, going down for a nap. These are all things that you're also going to want to have embedded within your routine. Obviously, if it's nap time, clock out, leave. We're not here to commit insurance fraud. We're here to ensure that what we're doing is creating a safe environment that is promoting healthy behavior change. I always put this as a rule for myself and usually for staff as well, which is limit or refrain from using your personal property. We find that often, unless you're listening to music or something like that as non-contingent reinforcement, providing a phone to the learner can often create a lot of backlash. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is refraining from providing your personal property to the learner, because what will end up happening then is that then there's going to be another RBT who comes in the next day who maybe doesn't want that learner to have their phone or to take something from their purse or use something that's their own personal property. And that's your right as an RBT. Many will argue, well, it's also my right to allow them to have it. Yes. However, let's think about what's generalizable. It's not a healthy generalization consequence for a learner to then take things from other people's purses or from other people's bags or to pick up somebody else's phone in the natural occurring world that's outside of this type of clinical based setting. So let's say that you are wanting to enrich the environment with some music. You can say, you can look at my phone at what the options are for a song, or my preferred thing to do is, what is it that you want to listen to? Or again, going ahead and putting in something that you know is a preferred song. And if they ask for something different, then change that. But really ensuring that we're not then allowing or reinforcing the behavior of taking things, even if they're manding for things that are somebody else's property. Because again, we're really looking at what's going to be most generalizable to community settings, other home settings, when you leave, and all of the above, right? And y'all, first then, use first then. It is super, super helpful whenever you're trying to establish what the first activity is and then what the next activity is. First, we're going to do letters, then we're going to go outside and play. The other thing that I would like to do too is going back to talking and collaborating with the caregiver. Is outside available today? Maybe it's really muddy. Maybe there's housework that's going on. Maybe there's yard work that's going on. Maybe outside is not actually available. So we want to make sure that what we offer is something that we can actually provide. And we don't want to say this to the learner before we've established that expectation with the caregivers. So before you even say something to the learner, make sure that you say, hey, is it okay if after we do X, Y, and Z that we go OUT, right? And if the parents are like, no, actually not today, cool. Then grab some other things that you are going to be able to do and offer that are available. Snack is also one of those things. Make sure that after you finish a certain thing, are they going to be able to have snack? And what snack options are going to be available for them? These are things that we want to make sure are, again, managed by you and the caregiver as something that is going to be a reasonable expectation for the household. Another thing too is that I've found that I have a lot of climbers. I don't know if y'all do, but that seems to be a pretty common behavior that we're all working through. Sometimes climbing can be innocuous. And sometimes the caregiver really doesn't want their child to climb on furniture. I get it, it's not safe. Or to jump from furniture. Again, I get it, it's not safe. So making sure that what you have established is something that, again, the learner understands is a household rule, right? One of my favorite things to do is when I deny access to climbing, I'll say, okay, but we can ask mom. And again, 9 out of 10 times the caregiver is like, no, right? We're like, oh man, mom said no, let's do this instead. And then we offer another alternative, like jumping on the mini trampoline, swinging on the swing, spinning in a chair. Those are some reasonable alternatives that you can offer that can also meet that proprioception and vestibular need. If we're really talking, that's more sensory, right? So making sure that what we're doing is also just logical and safe. If a caregiver or if a learner asks to do something and you question it at all, it's probably going to be a no from the caregiver. I once had a learner ask if they could paint one of their dolls. The RBT allowed it. The caregiver was very upset about it. It's understandable, right? It seemed innocuous to the RBT at the time because they were really trying to establish themselves as a fun, loving, cool person. But what ended up happening then is a pretty difficult situation that we had to deal with, which is that wasn't allowed by the home. The caregivers wouldn't have allowed it. They asked another adult who they thought was a safe adult, and that adult said yes. And they're like, fantastic. Finally, my behavior has been reinforced. There are some learners too that I work with where if they're asking me, I often wonder if it's because caregivers have already said no. So again, double check with the caregivers of this, if that's already allowed or if it's not something that's allowable, and go from there. We're creative individuals and we can always think of something else that we can do that is an alternative or a replacement behavior to whatever it is that they might be mandating to you for, that might not be something that the caregivers would agree to. So again, manage those expectations before, have a conversation with the caregivers before, and if you aren't comfortable talking with the caregiver, reach out to your BCBA so that they can, because that's part of our jobs as BCBAs and as your supervisors, which is to take that brunt for you. So again, message them, send them a quick text or whatever messaging system you'll use and say, this is what the child's asking for. Is this okay? So like yesterday, I had an RBT reach out to me and they said, the client said that they don't have to do these PT exercises as part of their home health exercise plan. Is that still the case? And often we're brought in to manage the behaviors, right, that come across with come with doing home health exercises. And the RBT reached out to me. I reached out to the caregiver and the caregiver said, no, she definitely still needs to be doing her home health exercises. Wasn't something that the learner wanted to hear. So the RBT then was creative with how to present this demand and say, breaking it down, doing it in smaller chunks, using time delay, going to a different activity on the schedule, then moving into those PT exercises. So we have that schedule and routine. It doesn't mean that we can't move things around. It means that it's there as a baseline for us. It's there for, I don't know what else I'm going to do today, but I know I'm going to do these 3 things or these 5 things. And then I can move them as I need to, so that what we're doing is still getting everything accomplished by our treatment plan standards, but we're also still creating an environment that is consistent and safe for routine that, again, is trauma informed. All right. That doesn't mean that when we say, okay, this is what's on our schedule, we have to do this. Sometimes we might have 5 to 10 minutes wiggle room. We can do this for 5 minutes before we move into this next thing. Um, that's also one of the best ways to establish yourself with siblings as somebody who is in control over the environment. Again, we're not in control of the sibling, but we are in control of the environment and how we set the environment to let that sibling know as well that what we're doing is for their target sibling, right? And not the other sibling, without being jerks about it, without saying, you're not being very nice and I don't want to play with you right now. Instead, it's when we play, this is what we're going to be doing. When we do this, this is what we're going to be doing. And then if that's going off the rails a little bit, reestablish those expectations again. Say, hey, sibling, remember, this is how we're playing today. I have told this learner that we can't climb and you are climbing. So you're going to then use how you're going to reinforce the behavior that's appropriate while placing the other behavior on extinction. And that might look like where you're praising your target learner by saying, I love how you're doing this with me and you're being so safe. And then often what you'll find is that the sibling also wants that praise and attention. And as soon as they start engaging in a behavior that is an alternative or a safer behavior, you're going to praise that behavior as well. We're going to get into that a little bit more as we go through what pivotal response training is. And here we are. So pivotal response training, this is from a pilot examination from the adapted protocol for classroom pivotal response training. And what I found is that this is really very effective. You're going to offer choices. You're going to model by engaging in the activity that needs to be engaged with. And then you're going to provide learning opportunities for both the sibling and the target learner. Does that mean you're taking data on the sibling? No. But you're also trying to make sure that they recognize that that sibling is a part of their environment. And when we're teaching them alternative behaviors and we're providing them learning opportunities, we're also then reinforcing and establishing safe stimuli within the learner's environment. You can also give opportunities by saying, okay, sibling, here's what I want from you today. Do you want to help us with letters? Or do you want to help us with numbers? Or do you want to do ABA with us today? Giving those choices are actually really empowering for most siblings. And again, we're not taking data on that sibling. We're taking data on our target learner, but we're also utilizing the sibling as a mainstay stimulus within that environment. You're going to provide, skipping a step, you're going to gain attention. So let's say you are doing tacting letters. So gain both of the siblings' attention. Provide that opportunity for that sibling to maybe do 3 letters on their own, and then give alternative letters that are targets that you're working on with the target sibling. So for example, if target siblings working on E, G, and H, give A, B, and C to the sibling. They might say, this is really easy. Great. You can say like, oh my gosh, I love that you are finding that to be really easy for you. You were so smart, right? We're going to provide that reinforcement. And then we're going to say, we're working on these letters for sibling. Can you help us with that? Do you want to present these letters for them next time? You're going to provide cues to that sibling of, here are the letters. You can run this trial with your sibling, and you're the one collecting data, and you might not collect data on this round, and that's okay. You're still showing that this sibling is here to help rather than to be a hindrance, right? And again, you're going to provide consequences and differential reinforcement. Just like what I was talking about before with the siblings engaging in an unsafe behavior, I'm going to use differential reinforcement. And instead, I'm going to really praise my target learner who's doing what needs to be done. Opposite can also happen. Target learner can then be engaging in unsafe behaviors, the siblings engaging in alternative and appropriate behaviors. I'm going to praise the siblings' behavior because that also is helpful. For example, one time we were working in a home and the demand was to change a pull-up. Pretty standard demand in a home. The mother was assisting with getting the target learner to change their pull-up. They were in full-on assent withdrawal, laying down, grabbing at things, saying curse words, everything under the sun other than going to the bathroom to change their pull-up. So what I did is I used differential reinforcement. And I didn't attend to that. I didn't ignore the child, but I went to the sibling instead and I said, show me what you're working on. And they were working on a summer workbook. And I gave a ton of praise to the sibling that immediately signaled to the target learner, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the praise and attention that I want. And mom even signaled too, Meg's going to be with your brother this whole time unless we do this. And then as soon as the target learner started to demonstrate assent by walking to the bathroom, I signaled to the sibling, hey, brother's doing what we need him to do right now. I will be right back to check on what you're doing. I gave a learning opportunity for him to then gain, again, a positive consequence from me or a beautiful praise and reinforcement. So I said, why don't you color in all of the ovals? And when I come back from being with brother, I want to see all of those ovals colored in, right? And what this did was reinforce the siblings' behavior, and it also reinforced the target learner's behavior. We're also going to reinforce attempts, right? I can see that you're trying. Let's try this again. Let's do this over so that we can have our full on break or whatever it might be, right? Our fun activity that we have scheduled. So pivotal response training is essentially giving all of these 8 steps to somebody in the environment. And in this example, it's talking about a teacher and paraprofessional, but I've also seen this done with peer students in the classroom. So if you're in the clinical environment, you can do this with peers as well. Let's say that you are in another RBT went to the bathroom. They were like, can you watch my kiddo for a second while I go to the bathroom? Sure. You're then going to say, here's what we're doing, right? You're going to set the expectations. You're going to provide choices. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Do you want to hand out the papers or do you want to hand out the crayons? Then I'm going to model what needs to be done. We're going to tracing letters. Awesome. Do you want to trace letters with us to provide that opportunity? Gain their attention. Okay, I have both of you ready to go. Are we ready? Awesome. Let's get started, right? That's that cue. Let's get started. The SD, trace your letters. Then you're going to provide the consequence or differential reinforcement as it's necessary. I can see that you're trying. Remember, here's what we're doing right now, right? And then reinforcing those attempts, reinforcing the alternative behavior that we're trying to see, the skill building behavior. This is how pivotal response training works in the natural environment. And that's also how we can help empower the siblings who very much are trying to figure out and cope with the fact that their target sibling is getting all of this undivided one-on-one attention. That's not the reality for most caregivers. Most caregivers in multiple sibling homes have to divide their attention amongst the siblings. So while it's nice to have somebody who's providing one-on-one attention to the target sibling, sometimes then the other sibling is like, I want that attention too. We're here to give it to them. We're not here to ignore them. We're not here to push them out. We're not here to say, I don't want you in here, because that's also going to lead to pairing yourself with punishment strategies for the sibling And then that's going to create an unhealthy learning environment in the long run. So we really want to try to help provide this. Let's say that we're working on functional communication training, and one sibling, the other sibling, is constantly in target sibling space. You can say, hey, space, please. Oh, sibling, target learner just asked for space. Let's give him some space. Why don't you, and then give them a task to do. Can you please get the Uno cards from the shelf? And then once I finish doing tacting letters with target, then we can all play together. Does that work for you? Right? When we do these types of things, we're reinforcing that alternative behavior while also maintaining the focus on the target learner. All right. It's easier said than done, and I get that. It takes a lot of practice and fluency with building up these skills, but the more that you do it and the more that you practice it, I promise the more comfortable that you'll become with it. That's just the way our own skill acquisition goes as well, right? Okay. I've said this a few times. Siblings are a part of the environment. And even more so, as soon as you leave, they are going to still be there, right? You've left, your 3-hour session is over, sibling's still there. But because we didn't also give some alternative behaviors for the sibling to engage in, more than likely, they're going to engage in some behaviors that they might have contacted reinforcement in the past. So they hit the brother, brother hits back, brother gets in trouble, not the sibling, right? That's going to reinforce that behavior over time. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is teaching space, please. Oh my God, I love that you gave so-and-so space. That's so amazing. You are such a great sister. You are such a fantastic and caring brother. They asked for space and you gave it to them. Beautiful. It works both ways. You can also prompt the sibling to say, it looks like you need space. You can let him know I need space. And then you prompt the target learner to give the sibling space. These are functional communication-based alternatives that we can reinforce throughout the environment. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about this already, but it's important to include siblings. Direct them. Give them tasks to do. Go pick up the Uno cards. Hey, go check to see if mom needs help with X, Y, and Z. Give them a task to do. Hey, we're doing letters. Can you help me with them? Here are 3 letters that you can give him to see if he knows what they are, or she knows what they are, or they know what they are. Tell them what the goal is. My goal is to get him to identify G, H, and I. I need your help with that. Can you help me with that? Perfect. And if they withdraw their assent, no big deal, right? No big deal. You can say, oh, that's fine. Maybe you can help us next time, right? Prompt the learner. And I put in here, not hand over hand. We're not here to physically manipulate anybody's body. We're here to provide verbal cues and verbal prompts and modeling prompts about what the expectations are. Reset those expectations if you need to. Hey, remember, sibling, this is what we're doing right now. I can tell that you don't want to do letters. That's fine. Could you be a big helper, though, and go ahead and get our next activity out for us? And again, they might be like, no. But then they usually do leave the area, usually. If they don't, and they're like crawling all over your letters, get the letters out from underneath them. Don't physically manipulate the sibling's body. Set them aside and say, hey, target, we're going to be doing letters in just a minute. It looks like right now, brother wants us to do something else, and then we'll bring it in. Or here's the other thing. You might need to call in the caregiver, and that's okay. It is okay. You aren't that child's parent. You aren't the target learner's parent either. But you might sometimes need to say, I really need help with this in this exact moment, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to get enough trials completed to say that what we were doing was meaningful and effective. So again, provide those alternatives for that sibling. Praise that sibling throughout. Praise the target learner throughout. And also see if there are preferred activities that can be done with the caregiver. Establish that expectation with the caregiver before. Do you want to play Uno with us whenever we're all finished? I understand if you need to get lunch ready. Totally get it. That's understandable, right? Can I see if we can help get out the fruit or the vegetables or the sides for lunch whenever it's time? So again, you're providing that alternative activity that can be done with the caregiver as well. And then really what you're doing is also putting the sibling back under the control over the caregiver. So the caregiver can then be like, hey, sibling, this is what we're doing right now, right? And then you can say, hey, target, this is what we're doing right now, right? This again just is building and reinforcing and establishing the stimuli that are within the environment. When we're including siblings, always use positive language. You can say no, but refrain from saying things like, that's not very nice. I don't like that you did that. You can say, it looks like so and so needs space. It looks like so and so wants to do this on their own right now. And then give them something else that they can do. It looks like so and so needs a hug. It looks like, right? You're tacting and labeling what's happening in the environment. You could say, we're really trying to work on our letters right now. Can you come back in just a minute whenever we're finished with this? Have them be a helper. Usually they want to be involved because, again, they're seeing that constant attention that's happening for the target learner, and they're not getting that constant attention. So figure out ways that you can have them be empowered to help and to collaborate. Or what do you think we should do right now? And again, going back to that example of whenever a scent is being withdrawn by the learner, see if you can gain assent with the sibling. Praise that so that then you're gaining assent from the target learner as well. Make it fun as you possibly can. Offer game choices, make cleaning up the area a game, make it a race. Keep your energy levels up. I think one of my biggest pet peeves as an implementer is walking into a session and seeing an RBT over here or a BCBA over here, and the target is over there. Now, they might say, well, they didn't want to engage with me. You still need to be in close proximity. You still need to be close to the door. You still need to be a part of the environment. Or if you're giving a demand and it's something where they have to actually transition and move, you need to transition and move too. If we say you need to go to the bathroom, but we're sitting down, they don't understand that. Why are you sitting down? Why aren't you transitioning to the bathroom, right? So keep those energy levels up. And y'all, this is also where sometimes it is important to ever so slightly mask, right? And I'm never a big advocate for masking, but there are times that we're going to wake up in the mornings and be like, I am just not feeling it today. But sometimes when we do bring that energy level in, it can also help us bring our natural energy levels up and help us stay engaged throughout the session, even if we're just not quite feeling it that day. Okay. So again, this happens. Sometimes the sibling is just off the rails and we're like, I don't even know what to do. So you're going to praise the sibling who's following the directions. You're going to use differential reinforcement. You're going to go back to that routine. You're going to go back to what's consistent. You're going to reestablish those expectations. You're going to provide learning opportunities by using language that is helpful, using language that's going to empower the sibling, and you're going to facilitate ways for the siblings to man to each other, to respond to mands, and you're also going to reinforce that manding behavior. And again, y'all, involve the caregivers. Let them know what your goal is. You more than likely have a sibling interaction program in place that the BCBA wrote, and it's going to be written pretty generally in most instances because we don't always know how siblings are going to engage with each other. It might be in a structured game. It might be in free play. It might be in parallel play. Free play would be where they're both doing something different, but they're in the same vicinity. Parallel play is where they're playing with the same thing, but maybe not cooperatively, right? Ask the caregiver for help if you need it. Say, hey, mom, dad, we're having this little bit of an issue. Can you help out for just a second? They're willing to help. They understand that you're not there for the sibling. They understand that you're there for the target learner. But they also are there to still be that caregiver, right? They're still part of the environment. And if you're modeling these things that are positive and learning opportunities, parents are super smart and they're going to pick up on these learning opportunities as well as that language that you're modeling. Redirect the learner when you need to. Move your target learner to a different area if you need to. It's not unusual we have basements in Colorado, right? It's not unusual for you to be working in the basement. The sibling comes down, all hell breaks loose, and you're like, the sibling is moving now upstairs. So go upstairs. Let the caregiver know, so-and-so's still in the basement. I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're not there to ignore that child, but we are there to still facilitate a positive learning environment and advocate for the target learner that we're working with. Okay. Well, that wrapped up pretty quickly. So we very much talked about what it was going to be like to work with a sibling. That's not always going to be like roses and they're coloring next to each other and they're laughing together and they're manding and honoring each other's mands. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you are going to have to redirect the sibling, even though that might feel somewhat uncomfortable, but use positive language. Give them the opportunity to contact reinforcement and praise from you as well. Involve the caregivers as much as you need to. And most caregivers too, whenever we walk in, will say, so-and-so's really excited to see you today, and that so-and-so's the sibling and not the target learner. And that's okay. You can also differentiate your reinforcement, right? Let's say that target learner is withdrawing their assent, but the sibling is doing an appropriate alternative activity. Praise that. It's okay. It's okay to communicate with everyone who's in the environment because you're also showing that you're a safe person no matter what. I've also found that siblings who have been taught these things and have been given these learning opportunities grow into being the number one advocates for their siblings. If their behavior is constantly punished, and instead they're only seeing attention and praise being given to the target learner, that starts to build some animosity. And we don't want that. We really want everybody in that environment to feel as though they're safe, they're learning, and their behavior of advocating for their sibling is going to be reinforced. Okay, our next PDU is going to be on acceptance and commitment therapy with precision teaching. Precision teaching is a strategy that we talk about when we talk about fluency building. So ACT with fluency building. These are two of my favorite things. So I'm going to be very excited to talk about this one. As usual, for PDU credit, send me an email with your 3 takeaways, your RBT number, and the date that you watched this. And again, everything that we're doing right now is on YouTube. It's all donation based. If you don't have anything to give, you don't have anything to give, and that's okay. We're still going to give you the credit for it. Y'all are RBTs. Nobody's expecting you to pay $50 for a PDU. So go ahead and do what feels comfortable for you, but make sure that you've gotten your 3 takeaways per the board standards. Email them to me with your RBT certificate number, as well as the date that you completed this. All right, everyone. Happy learning.